The deadliest single night of rainfall in the history of Juiz de Fora, Brazil, has buried entire neighborhoods alive, and the hillsides have not stopped moving. In the last 12 hours, at least 14 people have been killed. 45 are missing. 440 displaced. More than 20 separate landslide burials recorded across the city. 211 emergency incidents logged between Monday night and Tuesday morning. The Paraibuna River, the waterway that runs through the center of a city of 540,000, has left its banks. Neighborhoods are cut off, streets are underwater, schools have been converted into shelters. The Avenida Brasil, the main artery through downtown, is submerged. 584 millimeters of rain in a single month, nearly 4 times the historical average. The wettest February in the city's recorded history. Mayor Margarita Salomão declared a state of public calamity at 1 a.m. Tuesday. Federal and state agencies have been mobilized. The Minas Gerais Military Fire Brigade has deployed search dogs and specialized disaster units. They are still digging. But here is the detail that tells the real story. In the Parque Jardim Burnier neighborhood, on the southeast edge of Juiz de Fora, there is a hillside. On that hillside, 12 homes sat in a row. Families, children, lives built into the slope the way millions of Brazilians build. Not because the land is safe, but because the land is what they can afford. The houses were small, concrete block walls, tin roofs, stacked up the gradient, one behind the other, each one leaning on the earth that held the one above it. On Monday night, at approximately 9 p.m., the hillside moved. All 12 structures slid. Not one house, not 2, 12. The entire slope released at once, carrying walls, roofs, furniture, and the people inside them into the darkness below. Major Demetrius of the Minas Gerais Fire Brigade told TV Globo his team was dispatched immediately, but they could not reach Burnier. The Paraibuna River had already overflowed, blocking the only route in. By the time rescuers arrived, 4 people were already dead. Among them, a child. 17 remain missing. 5 of those missing are children. 9 survivors have been pulled from the debris alive and rushed to the hospital de pronto socorro. Rescuers with search dogs and heavy equipment are still working the site, and the rain forecast for the next 72 hours has not improved. To understand how Juiz de Fora arrived at this moment, you have to watch the timeline accelerate. Throughout February 2026, Juiz de Fora has been absorbing rain without pause. By Monday morning, February 23rd, the city had already accumulated 460.4 millimeters for the month, smashing the previous all-time February record of 456 millimeters set in 1988. That record had stood for 38 years. It fell before the worst of the storm had even arrived. Every slope in the city was already saturated, every hillside was already loaded, and the sky was not finished. On Sunday, February 22nd, a storm system triggered 36 separate emergency incidents across the city in a single afternoon, 14 landslides, and 12 flash flood events. Civil Defense issued a grave alert warning of persistent rain and high landslide risk. By Monday evening, February 23rd, the system intensified. At approximately 10 p.m., the city issued its most severe warning. More than 90 millimeters fell in 3 hours across the central zone. By 1 a.m. Tuesday, the storm total reached 183.1 millimeters, exceeding the entire historical monthly average for February in a single overnight burst. The Paraibuna River broke its banks for the first time in a generation. Lieutenant Henrique Barcelos, spokesperson for the Minas Gerais Military Fire Brigade, confirmed more than 40 emergency calls generated by the river overflow alone: flooding, burials, road blockages, residents trapped, structural collapse on hillsides and riverbanks. The fire brigade logged 211 incidents related to landslides and structural risk between Monday night and Tuesday morning. Schools were shut, bus services were suspended. The Mergulhão, the underpass connecting the city's outer neighborhoods to the center, flooded and closed. The city was cut in half by its own river. And then it got worse. Juiz de Fora sits in the Zona da Mata region of Minas Gerais, surrounded by the rolling hills and steep valleys of southeastern Brazil's Atlantic forest corridor. The city of 540,000 was built along the Paraibuna River and up the slopes on either side of it. The geography is the problem. When rainfall saturates the clay-heavy soils that cover these hillsides, the ground does not drain. It holds water until the weight of the saturated layer exceeds the friction holding it to the slope beneath. Then it releases, not gradually, all at once. The slide carries everything sitting on top of it: trees, soil, foundations, homes, and anyone inside them downhill in seconds. In Parque Burnier, 12 structures failed simultaneously because the entire slope beneath them had been loaded beyond capacity by weeks of continuous rain, then pushed past its breaking point by 183 millimeters in a single night. Here is the problem that is not making headlines. February 2026 delivered 584 millimeters of rain to Juiz de Fora. That is nearly 4 times the historical average for the month. It is the wettest February in the city's recorded history. But this is not a freak event. This is a pattern. Petrópolis, 200 kilometers south in the same mountain corridor, lost 231 people to landslides in February 2022 after 252 millimeters fell in 3 hours. Cássia de Castro Martins Ferreira, a researcher at the Federal University of Juiz de Fora who studies extreme weather events, said after Petrópolis, "It didn't rain, it was an extraordinary amount of water that poured down." She identified the core risk not as weather, but as urban expansion, residents moving into hills, clearing forests that once buffered mudslides, building on terrain too steep for habitation. That description applies to Juiz de Fora tonight. The neighborhoods where the 14 confirmed dead were found, JK, Santa Rita, Vila Ideal, Lourdes, Vila Alpina, São Benedito, Vila Olavo Costa, are hillside communities. They are built on slopes because there is nowhere else affordable to build. The same slopes that move when 584 millimeters of water saturates their foundations. And the man on Rua Eurico Viana in Vila Alpina, who went outside to help a neighbor being rescued from a slide, was buried alive when the earth shifted again beneath him. His body has been recovered, others at the site have not. And then it got worse. Not worse as a single catastrophic moment. Worse in the accumulation. Worse in the details that arrive one address at a time. Each one a family. Rua Natalino, Jose de Paula, Barrow J.K. 4 people dead, buried under their own homes after the hillside above them released without warning. On the same street, rescuers found the earth had taken the foundations out from under the houses and folded them downhill into each other. In the neighboring block, on Rua Francisco Gonçalo Faria, more victims were reported trapped beneath collapsed structures. No confirmed count of how many were still underneath. Just digging. Rua Orville Darby Dutra, Barrow Santa Rita. 4 more dead. Same mechanism, same slopes, and same type of housing built into the same type of terrain that has been killing people across southeastern Brazil for decades. In the Bom Pastor neighborhood, Julio Cesar de Oliveira Paz was inside his home with his wife and 2 children when the water began forcing its way through the walls. Then he heard it. What he described to reporters as estrondo muito grande, a massive boom. The house shook violently. The hillside behind them released, ripping 3 energized electrical poles from the ground as it moved. Julio grabbed his family. They had minutes, maybe less. The couple and their 2 children made it out the front before the slide reached the structure. They escaped with their family. Nothing else. The home they left behind was hit by the full weight of the slope. On Rua Leonora Goretti, a house collapsed onto 2 people, one partially buried, one completely trapped beneath the structure. On Rua Nossa Senhora do Líbano in Grajaú, a retaining wall gave way and a hillside fell onto a 2-story building with a resident still inside, soterrado, buried. On Rua José Francisco Garcia in Lourdes, a 2-story house folded inward with 3 people in it Excavators were called in to move the debris. In El Dorado, on Rua Arcanjo Campo de Miranda, a 70-year-old man and a 10-year-old child were trapped inside their home after a landslide sealed every exit. Grandfather and grandchild, locked inside by the earth itself. One person from the address is still listed as missing. In Granja Tres Moinhos, an elderly couple was imprisoned in their own house when a hillside covered the door. And on Rua Eurico Viana, in Villa Alpina, a man heard his neighbors screaming after the first slide hit. He went outside to help. The ground shifted again. He was buried by the second collapse. His body was recovered. Others at the site were not. At the Hospital de Pronto Socorro, the emergency department has not stopped receiving patients since before dawn. 3 municipal schools have been converted into shelters: Paulo Rogerio dos Santos, Murilo Mendes, and Nilo Camilo Ayupe. The displaced are arriving with what they carried out. In Parque Jardim Burnier, they are still digging. The National Institute of Meteorology has issued heavy rain alerts for parts of 14 Brazilian states, including the entirety of Minas Gerais. The forecast through Friday calls for continued instability. Overcast skies, isolated storms, and burst events capable of delivering 30 to 60 millimeters per hour. The ground beneath Juiz de Fora is already holding 4 times its normal February rainfall. Every new millimeter increases the probability that another slope, somewhere in this city, will reach its limit and let go. The official framing is familiar: extreme weather, record rainfall, seasonal instability, the peak of Brazil's rainy season. Except this is not just weather. This is what happens when a city of 500,000 people expands up hillsides that were never engineered to hold them. When the forests that once absorbed rainfall and anchored soil to slopes are cleared for construction. When the same failure mode, saturated clay, hillside release, homes buried with families inside, kills 231 people in Petrópolis in 2022. Kills 918 in the mountains of Rio de Janeiro in 2011. Kills 212 in Rio in 2010, and kills 14 in Juiz de Fora tonight. The mechanism has not changed. The construction has not stopped. The hills have not moved. Until they do. How do you tell 440 displaced people sleeping on gymnasium floors tonight that the rainfall forecast for the next 72 hours shows no sign of clearing? How do you explain to the families of Parque Jardim Burnier, where 17 people, including 5 children, are still buried under 12 collapsed homes, that the rescue team was dispatched at 9 p.m., but could not reach them because the river had already swallowed the only road in? And if 584 millimeters in a single month can bury 14 people across 7 neighborhoods in one night, and the slopes are still saturated, and the rain is still falling, who is counting the hillsides that have not moved yet? In Parque Jardim Burnier, the search dogs are still working. 12 homes slid off the slope in the dark. 9 people were pulled out alive. 4 were not. 17 are still missing, and the rain has not stopped. On the Magi.